Joining us in our Crime Time segment, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, Assistant Chief Jailer and former Chief of the Major Crime Section. Adam served as a police officer for 30 years as the Chief of the Major Crimes Unit. He oversaw homicide cases, robberies, special victims units, and a gun assault team. And also joining us, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen. Jennifer has 30 years of experience with law enforcement as a forensic scientist. She's an expert in police procedure regarding forensic evidence collection, preservation, processing, and storage, and spent 15 years working on active crime scenes. Great to have you both with us tonight. We appreciate it. Let's get right to our first story, which is a pastor arrested for holding service. This comes to us from WFTS in Tampa.
The Hillsborough County Sheriff says the pastor at the River at Tampa Bay Church put a lot of people in danger by blatantly disobeying social distancing. This video is from the service yesterday morning, where an estimated 400 to 500 people crowded into the sanctuary. We tried to reach out to the church for a statement, but we were directed to their website, where they say the church should be listed as an essential service, just like hospitals and police. The sheriff says the pastor was warned not to do this, but chose to do it anyway. The sheriff's office says this violates Hillsborough County's Safer at Home order and that the pastor, Rodney Howard Brown, broke the law in doing so.
His reckless disregard for human life put hundreds of people in his congregation at risk and thousands of residents who may interact with them this week in danger.
The pastor is charged with misdemeanors for unlawful assembly and violation of a public health emergency order.
These times are different, but my first question tonight, have you ever arrested a pastor for holding service? Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, this is unusual.
Highly unusual, Vinny. Personally, I have never arrested a pastor, but in this case, I believe I would. I mean, our biggest problem right now in this country is our second biggest problem is people's lack of respect for the virus. It's starting to be really frustrating, I'm sure, to all the first responders that are dealing with this, having to tackle this situation and having to fight not only the virus, but people who just refuse to not believe that it's true. Just a week ago, I didn't know anybody that knew anybody that was affected by this. But now this week, I know 3 people who have lost friends or family to this virus. So the reality is starting to show and it's starting to really show up.
Jennifer Shen, the other part of this is you force an arrest. Now that police officer who has to make the arrest is at risk as well, as is everyone in booking, and the people have to take the mug shots and everything else associated with arresting someone.
That is true. And I find this so shocking because, not only did he put all of his congregation at risk, he put all of their families at risk, and then his town, where all of the people that he associates with every day, he put all of them at risk. And I just don't understand it. I think what we're seeing here is someone who is not taking the virus seriously. And we have to. The next 2 weeks are going to be tough, and everybody has to do their part. And that includes pastors of church who people really rely on. There's a lot of other things you can do. You can do this using Zoom or, doing a lot of sort of online type interaction with your congregation. And that's what he needs to do here.
Let's take a listen to the sheriff from down in Hillsborough County who spoke with us earlier, talking about, his reaction to all of this, because I guess you don't want to arrest a pastor. You don't want to have to, but he seemed a little upset, to say the least.
I would never exercise discretion when speaking for law enforcement across the entire country. But I have to tell you what, I feel pretty confident. Like us, most law enforcement during the declared state of emergency, a pandemic, this national medical emergency that we're all facing, they don't want to arrest anybody. They want to focus on education. And that's what we're focused on. Our deputies are out there focusing on business that maybe shouldn't be open and explaining to them why, and they close down. Approaching a group of 35 individuals who are playing basketball, explaining to them the dangers of that they're putting themselves in and others, and they're breaking up and agreeing, and they leave. we gave this individual every opportunity over a 3-day period to comply with the provisions set forth in this emergency order. And he was adamant about being defiant in the order, leaving us with no choice. And I say this all the time: shame on him, his attorney, and his church leaders for forcing us during the time of declared emergency, forcing us to do our job.
Lieutenant Colonel, how much discretion or choice does a member of law enforcement have? I mean, because he said he left us no choice.
In this situation, Vinny, there are so many people that are hurting across the country and dying. And I would imagine that this sheriff in this situation felt that he had no choice. To not take action would pretty much be condoning the actions of this pastor. There's another pastor in Louisiana in a similar situation that was arrested yesterday, I believe. So this has to come to a stop. We're starting to learn that many people that are being infected now are being infected by attending such gatherings, church gatherings, funerals. I mean, it's starting to get to the point where we have just really got to adhere to social distancing to make.
All right, let's take a listen to the pastor himself. He did respond publicly about what is taking place here.
I'm not ashamed to be arrested for the First Amendment of the United States, which I know other people think I was getting arrested for other things. I mean, you can make up whatever charges you want to. Ultimately, I was being arrested for the First Amendment, and that's it. And I know the sheriff said we can't hide behind the First Amendment, but we can, because I was sworn in as a citizen of the Constitutional Republic of the United States, and I raised my hand to pledge to defend the Constitution of America against enemies, foreign or domestic.
You know, Jennifer, some would argue that the enemy here is the invisible enemy that we're fighting, and part of that fight is to not do what he was doing. His response to me is unreal here.
I agree. And you're not allowed to run into a crowded building and yell fire either, right? So when you have a situation like this where you are putting people at risk, people can die from being exposed, then you have, I mean, it's just shameful. It is absolutely shameful. I'm so surprised that he would go ahead with a group like this. So many people in such a small place, just absolutely unacceptable.
And Lieutenant Colonel, the other part of what's happening now, we know what a stress this entire situation is putting on law enforcement coast to coast, because members of law enforcement are quarantined. The numbers are down. They're working longer hours. Every time they leave the house, they have to interact with people. And then you have someone like this who is bringing hundreds of people together and now creating more of a situation. To me, you know, you don't want to do it because, yeah, people are going to church. But at the end of the day, this is a true safety issue, and that's the first job of law enforcement, is to serve and protect.
Vinny, and from both the pastor here that we're talking about and the other pastor in Louisiana are threatening to actually hold church services again this Sunday. So it's almost like they are trying to become martyrs and heroes amongst their parishioners there, and it's not going to end good. I predict that there are going to be some parishioners that are going to fall ill in both of these congregations if they keep this up.